Hi everyone, this is Joy Daniels, Head of Technology Partner Marketing at Magento. Today our guest presenters are from dotmailer and Nosto. I want to introduce Patrick Gobel-Gugiani, who's heads up customer success at Nosto, and Skip Fedora, client success services director at dotmailer. Both dotmailer and Nosto are Magento Premier Technology partners. In this webinar, Nosto and dotmailer are teaming up to share successful combinations of strategies to extend the core capabilities of Magento Commerce in 2018. You'll learn which strategies and technologies power those strategies and what you should be eyeing for 2018. So a little bit about our webinar format. We'll follow Patrick and Skip's presentation with a Q&A period. So please submit your questions for them in the questions portion of your toolbar. We've also included some information sheets on Nosto and dotmailer in the handout section of your toolbar, so check those out. And in the chat portion of your toolbar, we've included a link to an online content asset called the Definitive Guide of a Supercharged Magento Store, which is located on nosto.com. And this is actually a project that the Magento Premier Technology partners have been working on. So with all that started, Patrick and Skip, let's get started, and Patrick is actually going to kick us off.
Thanks, Joy. Really great to be here. I hope everyone has a great day so far. And it might be weird to some of you to talk about 2018. Maybe it seems miles away and still Black Friday and the holiday season ahead of you, but it's good always to be one step ahead of your competitors, and thinking about 2018 is certainly part of that. And as part of my job as the head of customer success at Nosto, I'm kind of in a privileged position to see how different online retailers in different markets get to think about their strategy and some of the results that we've had with them, and also how they prepare for the both upcoming season and the next year. And we've seen some few things that seem to be changing a little bit in next year, and really during this next 15 minutes, my goal is to give you two things. One is a high-level perspective that will help you get a little bit of a high view level on the idea of what's about to come. And then two is at least one tactical insight that you can use both in the upcoming season and particularly next year. So what's ahead of us? I mean, 2018 looks that it's just nothing new, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to do anything about it. It's the old thing. So first of all, people will continue to share their life digitally even more. There'll be more people from all age groups sharing on various channels, not just Facebook, but really everywhere, photos, videos, and everything, almost live logging. Mobile, topic that has already been almost beaten to death, but it is becoming even more important, and there's strategies that worked this year might not work next year. And finally, shoppers or their expectations are ever rising, and you can't just expect them to be satisfied with what you had this year, and we need to think about how can we expect or match those expectations of tomorrow. And what I'll do is I'll break down each of these into how it's changing and what's the impact on e-commerce, and one specific idea of what you can do about it in your store. So if we start with the first one, this might be a familiar picture to some of you. We have really, as mentioned, from all age groups, people sharing their life, and it's almost as if you don't capture and share that, you haven't lived through it, which is some could say it's a sad state of affairs, but it does play a role in e-commerce. And specifically when you think about the amount of information that's being shared, it creates this interesting abundance of content that is being generated by your customers and prospects. And specifically, what it looks like from from your point of view is that it empowers you to move from this, so pure product pictures, into something like this, where you have photos and content that's really generated by your users engaging with your products. And the interesting thing that we've seen is that not only does it play along with the trends of how particularly millennials engage with their smartphones, so take photos and then send them, but ironically, it's at the same time one of the cheapest ways of creating content, as well as the most powerful way of advertising. So people tend to distrust the content that comes from brands, retailers, and advertising, and they much prefer to look at things that seem more authentic and come from other clients or other people like them, maybe in the same region, for example. And just to provide you with a more practical example of what this could look like is, for example, in advertising. And specifically, Instagram tends to be a very aspirational platform. And for those of you who've done any ads on Instagram, I'm sure you've noticed that lifestyle images tend to work way better than just product images. But UGC takes that game to a whole new level, where you can take the most authentic photos that you can find, produced by your shoppers and users, and then you'll see a way higher click-through rate on those photos and ads. Mobile is something that might bore some of you, and there's been talk about responsive, talk about different kinds of ways how you can engage people, and I think by now it's old news that mobile is bigger than desktop and tablet when it comes to traffic. And I think what people still don't always get is that even if you have a higher conversion on your desktop, it doesn't mean that you can neglect mobile. And the reason is this, that let's say mobile is the discovery tool for your clients. They try to find the right products, and then some who are very much in need of something might go into desktop and buy. But if the experience is poor or the discovery phase is hard, a lot of people will drop out. And ironically, you might end up in a situation where there's a lot of people who browse on mobile, and then you see your desktop conversion increasing because so many drop out in the mobile phase. So, and at the same time, of course, you're losing a huge chunk of the potential revenue you can make on mobile. So think of it as a discovery tool, and there's many ways you can really use data to engage and help people discover. But perhaps more importantly nowadays, you also need to think about how you can capture and acquire new customers via mobile, because so much of our attention is on smartphones that if you just rely on desktop as a new customer acquisition vehicle, you lose out on like a massive chunk of where people spend, or where we spend our time. And one of the interesting new things that some of you might be using is the Facebook ad format called collection ad unit. And what it's doing specifically is you can think of the old way that they had their ad formats as first raising awareness, then demand generation, then conversion, and finally transaction. And you had like specific things that work well in the different areas. You might have maybe just videos or photos, many very kind of aspirational brand stories at the beginning of the funnel, and then you have more product-led advertising towards the end. For example, the static product images or even dynamic product ads. Now, what collection ad unit is doing is combining the best of both worlds. It has both the brand story-led content, for example, videos or photos about the products, combined with the list of products, like a grid of products. And the good thing is that when you compare it to a traditional video where you might have a link to the web page, you actually have something that is at the same time brand-led but also commercial, and also leads directly to the product page that people might need. So very interesting a way of acquiring new customers on mobile and capturing that attention that they have. So a couple of stats around this. So specifically around the dynamic product ads. So even they perform over 400% better compared to the static ads that you still see a lot. And I'm sure many of you still spend money there. So at least think about making those ads more dynamic and personalized to the recipient of those ads. And on average, you can expect at least 12x return on ad spend for doing those personalized ads. So every dollar you put in, you should get about 12 back. And with the collection ad unit, of course, it's still early days, particularly for us, but we've seen about 35% better click-through rates with that format, and I think it makes sense. It's combining both the brand with the commercial side into one nice package. The third and final trend that I wanted to mention here is around your shoppers. And it doesn't just refer to the millennials, it's really everyone is being almost like they're getting used to the good stuff from the big guys, and they're expecting that you are able to also tailor the shopping experiences like they have in Netflix, like they have in Amazon, and when they come to your store, they will have to have the same experience. And if you don't, they will bounce. And maybe some of the key aspects to keep in mind here is that an average customer, according to a review we did a year back, comes to your store at least 3 times before completing their first purchase. And that means that you have all the data that's required to tailor the shopping experience right from the first time. And I think it's particularly important this time of the year because you'll see a massive portion of your customers coming during the next couple of months, but typically these customers tend to have a lower lifetime value. So they either spend less or they spend less profitable products. And one of the best ways to tackle this is to think about long-term, think about tailoring the experience for them, both when it comes to campaigns that you do with these people, maybe next year, but also when they come back to you, so you're able to pick the right products that will convert them again, instead of having these one-time discount shoppers that come during Black Friday or Cyber Monday and then never come back. And really, if there's one key data that I'd like you to take away from this whole thing, is that you're no different from Amazon. You have the same data available as they do. The question is, are you capturing it? Are you using that data in any way? So how can you use that? Well, there's a couple of ways I want to show you. So first of all, geolocation. Here's Volcom and just an anecdotal example where someone from New York might see a different experience when it comes to the products that are relevant right now in that region when it's a bit colder. And then in Miami, you might see a very different set of products emerging just based on what other people in that location are doing right now. So there's no manual work. It's purely automated to that specific location. And of course, once you see that person actually browsing and they're either coming back as a returning visitor, as a returning customer, you can do so much more. Here's a Magento 2 site, Everlast, also Nosto client, and what they're doing is basically personalizing this set of products based on the affinity to certain kind of products and categories. And as you can see here, basically, when it comes to the first time, of course, Everlast is known for their boxing gear, and that's kind of what the first impression is as well. But once they've seen behavior that links you towards yoga products, in this case, they can actually start personalizing the gear that's being shown. And you can imagine how much more relevant that feels, first of all, and how much more likely you are to convert once you have that experience that you're used to. And the good thing is that it's not just some sort of rule-based thing where when you click on yoga, show yoga products. It's actually down to the individual. And specifically, let's say I'm, again, an Everlast client who is also into MMA, but also yoga and maybe even a bit of boxing. And I have this weird combination of behavior that you can track. So in this case, of course, we could really combine all of the stuff that's interesting to me and start predicting what are the right 4 products to me right now. And you'll see a huge uplift in conversion and just the relevancy of the whole shopping experience. So that's 2018, and as mentioned in the beginning, you might feel like, oh, luckily I don't have to think about it for many months, so I'll just forget about it and maybe think about it when I come back from Christmas holidays. But you really want to be one step ahead, and there's many things you can do or maybe should do today or yesterday to take most out of these ideas that we just talked about. So first of all, in order to do any kind of tailoring, you need to start collecting the behavioral data. Especially during the upcoming 2 months, you'll have a lot of beautiful data floating around about what people want, what do they prefer, their brand affinities perhaps, and that's up for grabs if you just do that. And as mentioned, you have all the same data available as Amazon and Netflix, but it's about whether you're collecting that or not. Now, after you've collected that, it's turning that data into something more relevant, something actioned. And there's 2 things that maybe point out here. So one is better marketing campaigns, and 2 is a more relevant shopping experience, specifically online store. So as you've seen a couple of examples on the way you can do it online, and then on the marketing side, of course, understanding what kind of products that are most likely to be interested to them. And third point is that it's not just enough to think about responsive sites anymore. You really need to have a plan strategy for how you're going to acquire traffic on mobile, how you're going to get the eyeballs on your brand when people are on their smartphones, and then how you're going to help them find the right products in the discovery phase and convert them. And some of them might go to desktop, but increasingly it'll happen right on their smartphones. And the fourth and final point, just around the UGC here, is that you can't just go into Instagram and start using the photos that people tag your brand with. You need to get consent, and you can either do that manually, or you can use third-party tools like Olapik, Yotto, 460, and many others that can help you get the consent from the users, either with incentives or just by asking. And maybe just a final point there on the UGC is that rarely happens automatically. You actually need to make an effort to really inspire people to share things with you and with each other. So make sure you have a strategy in place to either incentivize or encourage people to share more stuff and tag you there. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to leave you with this one more idea, that behavioral data, we've talked quite a lot about it, can really help you get consistency and relevancy across all the channels that you have, whether that's offline or brick and mortar stores, whether that's your on-site, social ad, anything. And of course, we'd love if you use Nosto for that. Besides the capturing of the data, of course, we have the artificial intelligence that we can then apply and then make sure we show the right products to each customer. But even we can't do everything. We're really good at social ads. We're a Facebook marketing partner, and we're really good at on-site experience, changing that. But then we use our friends and partners to make sure that the data gets to the right place. And I'm really excited to hear next from our good friends dotmailer and Skip, who will tell us not only how you can use behavioral data in your emails, but I think more generally just how you need to communicate with human beings. So hopefully that was valuable. Skip, over to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Now let's see if we can make the technology work here. Ah, there we are. Oh, jumped ahead. So, as I said, as Patrick said, I am Skip Federa. I'm Client Services Director at dotmailer. And for those who don't know, dotmailer is the leading global email and marketing automation platform. And our connector with Magento allows you to quickly and easily sync data from your Magento store into our platform to more easily build the types of segments and automated programs that we're going to be talking about today. So what I'm going to cover is, very much like Patrick said, nothing much is changing with email in 2018. Nothing much has changed with email in a number of years. But saying that, email is clearly not dead. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to talk about how we may be killing it. And then last, we're going to talk about what do your customers want, what do your consumers want out of your email program, and how are you going to deliver that? And then we'll have a quick little wrap up. So as I said, email is not only is it not dead, it is still the best performing marketing channel. Consumers love it. In the US, it's preferred by more than 4-to-1 over all other channels. In the UK, it's only 2-to-1. But the most importantly, that's across all age groups, especially the 19 to 34-year-olds, what I like to call the pesky millennials, because, well, frankly, I'm not one. Sorry, wrong button. There we go. So consumers love it. Marketers also love email for a number of reasons. First, email in combination with the power of SaaS tools allows you to get to that nirvana of the single customer view that we've been talking about probably for the last 20 years. Email becomes the digital key because everybody has an email address. If you don't have an email address, you're really living in a digital wasteland. You can't have a Facebook account. You can't have a Twitter account. You can't have an Instagram account. All those rely on an email address. So without it, you're kind of nowhere digitally. But more importantly, everybody knows what their own email address is. And that's really more than can be said for pretty much any other unique identifier, phone number, or anything like that. Recent data shows that most consumers only have 1 or 2 addresses and that they consistently use the same one for marketing. In other words, they're going to give you the same address every time. And that address is right at the front of their mind. So no matter how stressful the situation, no matter what their 4-year-old is doing at your till point, having a tantrum, dragging on the customer's leg, they're trying to get their wallet out, they're trying to get their card out, they're talking to the sales assistant, there's a big queue behind them, all those things adding to stress. But when the sales assistant says, sorry, would you like an e-receipt? What's your email address? That comes off straight out of their mouth, right off the top of their head. They don't even have to think about it. So it allows us to tie all the channels together. So as an example of that, picture that scenario I just described at the till point, lots of stress, lots of pressure. One of our clients implemented e-receipts, and what that allowed them to do is, because they're a multi-channel e-commerce retailer, so they've got offline and online, what it allowed them to do is start to tie those offline transactions to their online transactions and get that single customer view. Now, they also sell wholesale, and unfortunately, the wholesalers aren't going to give them the data back from those sales. But so they don't have the 360-degree view. Maybe it's a 270-degree view, but they've got the best view they've ever had of being able to tie all these transactions together. The second reason we love email is obvious. It is the highest performing channel. $39 return for every dollar spent. You can't get that anywhere else, frankly. And last but not least, it allows us to start to deliver on what our customers want, have human conversations at scale. Patrick talked a lot about personalization, and to this shopkeeper, personalization was not a strategy developed by a high-priced consultant or a technology implementation that somebody came in and did for him. No, it was second nature. This shopkeeper, he knew every one of his customers. He saw them on the street. His kids went to the same school as their kids. He saw them at church on Sundays and probably at the pub on Friday nights. The problem that we face as e-commerce professionals is that consumers still expect this level of personalization. Patrick laid it out very, very clearly. They expect what the big players can deliver in all of their e-commerce experiences. But we have to deliver that with either less budget or smaller teams or not enough time or, So how are we going to do that from an email perspective? The other thing we need to consider is that, unfortunately, we are disappointing our consumers when it comes to email. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we killing it by consistently failing to deliver on our promises to them when we collected their data and the promises of the channel? So in the US, 18% of consumers say they read most email marketing just in case there's something there that interests them. But at the same time, a third of US consumers think that the most marketing emails are irrelevant to them. And the stats in the UK in terms of irrelevancy are even worse. But what's most terrifying of all is that marketers agree. 42% of marketers feel that some or none of the emails they sent are relevant. So we're entering the most important selling season of all. Now it is more important to be able to have the right conversation at the right time, or not. But we'll have, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So what can we do to have these human conversations at scale? First, we need to recognize our customers and the consumers as individuals with segmentation and personalization. Now we're going to do this in a couple of different ways. First, we're going to start with this explicit data. That's data we collect from them when we ask them questions. They fill out a form, they fill out a survey when we register them in the first place. And every relationship starts with the getting to know you. And similarly, every breakup starts there too. So if we're not doing a good job here, the relationship could end really quite quickly. You don't want to start by asking loads of questions. You want to ask just a few questions. And then progressively get more data with a welcome program. Don't get their email address and just start to sell straight away. You want to get to know them. You want them to get to know you, and then start to sell. Now remember, when you're asking people things, these questions are going to be qualified. They're going to answer the question in the way they want to be perceived by us. So we always have to keep that in mind. Then the other thing we're going to look at is implicit data. This is what I like to call digital body language. And just like in any conversation, body language is really important so that you know if the person you're talking to is kind of into what you're talking about. So it's just like in your physical shop, right? Somebody comes in, they pick up a blouse, they look at it, okay, they put it back down. They may pick up a pair of trousers, they look at those, they put it back down. At some point, your shop assistant's going to come over, recognize this body language, say, ooh, can I help you with something? Would you like to find something else? Can I find it in your size or a different color perhaps? And obviously, this can lead to browse and cart abandonment programs, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But during this holiday season, in the lead up to 2018, it means a lot more. So you need to understand, who are your regular customers? Are they regularly shopping with you? Do they need that Christmas incentive? Or are they going to buy from you anyway? And if they're going to buy from you anyway, why give them the incentive? Why leave money on the table? Then you've got the people that bought last Christmas, so they're regular Christmas shoppers. They might need a little bit more of an incentive, but you should talk to them differently because they haven't been with you all year. They haven't been paying attention to your brand all year. So you're going to have to kind of reintroduce your brand. And then last but not least, it's those people that are new, those people that just came in through some other of one of your other marketing channels, search most likely, and they've signed up for your email program, but they're a brand new customer. That's your first purchase. So one of the things is you want to recognize who those folks are. You don't want to bombard them. You don't want to put them right into your marketing program and sell straight away. Think about it this way. Think about, you're going to go to a Christmas party. Lots of friends, lots of people you haven't met. You meet somebody new. Maybe you meet the person that's going to, your soulmate you're going to be with for the rest of the year. Now is not the time to be like, oh, hey, what are you doing next week? Let's go out on a date. No, they're going to be busy. It's Christmas. So what do? You get their number. Maybe you drop them a message on Christmas. Hey, I hope you're having a great day. Maybe drop them a message a couple days later. Have a great New Year. It's not till January that you start to build up that relationship. You start to connect with that person, really get to know them better so that you're aiming for the date on Valentine's Day. So they've already bought for you, going back to the purchasers now, they're your customers, not the date. They've already bought from you in the lead up to Christmas. They're not going to do it again. So the next thing you want to do is you want to react to your customers in near real time. Now, we did a study called Hitting the Mark of 50 UK and 50 US pure play and multi-channel e-commerce brands. And what we found was 60% of those brands in both the US and the UK were not doing what we called advanced automation. And what we called advanced automation was things like abandoned cart. Now, as I mentioned with the dotmailer and Magento connector, that's not really advanced, right? But here's the thing when you start thinking about abandoned cart. People don't necessarily abandon to get an offer. In fact, in some research that we've done, most people don't abandon their cart to get an offer. They abandon their cart because they got distracted. They abandon their cart because something else comes up. They're not looking for the offer. So use something else. Patrick talked a lot about UGC. UGC is a great way to get over the barriers to why they may not have bought. Don't just think about, oh, abandoned cart, I'm going to throw them an offer, because you're going to train them to wait for those offers. The other way to react is think about, just don't think about email. Think about being where they are. Be that mobile device, if you have an app push, their channels. Make sure you have that holistic view of them and can react to them wherever and react, maybe switch channels as it may be appropriate. Now, the going back to, sorry, totally lost my train of thought there. So, as I said, going back to understanding, reacting to them, we've already talked about a welcome program, mentioned a little bit about an abandoned cart or abandoned basket. Just think about, if you're not doing that, how much money are you leaving on the table and why? Last but not least, what your customers want is they want you to kind of take these two things, put them together, and deliver relevant content. So what is relevant content? Well, I already mentioned in the little Valentine's Day example, you don't want to meet somebody new and then just sell, sell, sell. You want to get to know them, right? People want to get to know you as a brand. So consumers say they sign up for offers, but marketers will tell you that offers are their worst performing content. And I think that's because most marketers just do batch and blast offers. I've got an offer, I'm going to send it out to everybody. They're not really doing anything to deliver a relevant offer to each and every customer. Now that's tough, right? Delivering a relevant offer to each and every consumer is very, very difficult. You may not have that many offers to put out there. So you need to think about other things that you can deliver. The other thing to think about is what I like to call subversive shopping. Now remember, in the last slide, I mentioned in your abandoned basket, if you just put in an offer, you'll train people to abandon the basket. This is what I call, one of the ways I call people doing subversive shopping. And this very simply is consumers who are trying to game the system to get you to give them a discount when they didn't really, A, they may not even deserve one, and B, they're not going to buy unless they get one. So, and we can very quickly train people to do that. So when you start thinking about delivering relevant content, think about, do I need an offer? Is there another way to get this? Am I leaving money on the table? All those kinds of things start to play together. Because offers only work if they're targeted. And it's unlikely, as I said, that you'll be able to target one to each and every person. Think about, is there a way I can do this editorially with inspiration, a lookbook, or here's some gift ideas, or tell the story of the product. What was the idea? Where did the idea come from? How did you do the design? Where do you source the materials? What kind of labor are you using? All those kinds of things get people interested without actually putting money out there, leaving money on the table. At the end of the day, consumers look at marketing in two ways. Well, actually, let me rephrase. Consumers look at your content in two ways. Content that is relevant is useful. Content that is irrelevant is marketing. Consumers don't like marketing. Patrick showed the stats. Consumers don't trust brand messaging. I don't have a stat for this for the US market, but I can tell you in the UK, marketing and advertising, or marketers and advertisers, rank lower than used car salesmen, insurance salesmen, politicians, and journalists in the order of professions that consumers trust. So we're starting from the bottom of the barrel, when we get going. So anything you can do to reinforce why they should buy your product is a good thing. So to wrap up. Okay, hang on. There's a slide here. There it is.
Yep, you can see it.
So, email is the best performing marketing channel. but we need to supercharge it by having human conversations at scale. So look at combining your explicit and explicit data to drive your segmentation. Remember that your explicit data is going to be a little bit jaded, so use that implicit data to validate it and react to it. You can't ignore the explicit data just because you think it's wrong, but you can definitely weight your communications more towards that implicit data. Secondly, leverage your automation to react in real time. Your consumers are coming to your site, they're interacting, they're moving around, they're doing lots of things. React to them as you would. What I like to tell my clients, if your consumer was standing right in front of you, what would you say right now based on what they just did? Be able to react in that kind of real time. And last but not least, this is a long-term relationship. You need to be able to sell without selling. You need to be able to build that relationship, get to know people, let people get to know you, and you'll have a long, fruitful relationship. Go the other way, and you'll be broken up before New Year's. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Joy to manage any questions.
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So there are a couple of quick questions. One is, I try to be the acronym police. There was a acronym for return on ad spend, so that is correct for one of the questions. Another one is a couple people arrived late and they asked if the webinar would be available on demand, and yes, I will have that available to you on the Magento.com website in the resource section probably within the week, and we will send out a follow-up email to all registrants that the webinar, with the webinar recording, a link to that. So on to probably Patrick and Skip. One of the questions is, you guys have been providing a great number of ideas. What is really the first step to get into maybe one of the first email campaigns you'd want to set up, or one of these ideas that you've mentioned, setting that up? Like, what is the first one you'd set up, or maybe what is the best one to set up? And also the same for personalization.
Okay, so I think on the email side, again, it's about building up that relationship. One of the things that we saw in the study that we did was that we went to a lot of e-commerce sites, 100, and we signed up, we waited, we browsed, we waited, we put stuff in the cart, we waited, and then we bought, and then we waited. And one of the things that we found is, we gave the brand all the data they thought they needed to market to us. We filled out every form, we checked every box appropriate, we did everything that they wanted us to do. And the number of brands that did what I like to call Dory marketing, Dory from Finding Nemo, didn't recognize who we were, didn't demonstrate that any of that information had sunk in, was really quite shocking. If you want to build a relationship and you want to be able to get more data out of your customers, you've got to demonstrate that you're going to use that appropriately. You have to earn their trust to be able to do that. So you can't even ask the question unless you've earned that trust. So that's where I would start. I'd say whatever you already know, start using it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I guess on the personalization side, I would start with the business challenges you might be facing at the moment. For different kind of challenges, you have different answers. So if you have no idea on how you're doing on different benchmarks, whether that's conversion, bounce, or anything else, you can check. We did a couple, actually last year, Magento year in review, where we benchmark, I think, over 1 million visits over different stores, and there's like, what are the benchmark conversion rate, mobile, on desktop, and a bunch of other metrics, AOV, and a few others. So what I would do is like check where are you falling behind, and then once you have that challenge of, okay, I need to increase my AOV, for example, is then look at the solutions. So as an example, let's say you have that issue that your AOV is much lower than it should be or it could be. Perhaps the best way to tackle that would be to do two things. One is to do really good cross-selling based on actual behavior. Is that, okay, you have product A, how can we make sure that we suggest the right products that were bought, viewed, or carded with product A? And maybe there's product C, that's new, so we have no data on that, but it's very similar to B, which has been bought with product A. We can link the two. So there's a bunch of things you can do there. And obviously, there's a lot of marketing campaigns on Instagram, Facebook, where you can target people that have bought before, so you can increase the total spend by targeting people that have already bought. So yeah, just first identify what's the challenge, what's the weakest link, and then go from there.
Okay, I have another question. Like, how would you justify to, for example, your manager getting involved with personalization or using a platform for personalizations? Do you have suggestions for that? And I'm assuming that's for Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an important question, and probably even if you decide to do something like this, at some point I'm going to ask, like, okay, where are the results? And there's a few ways you can do that. So obviously the first one is the traditional split test, where you drive 50% of the traffic to a site version with the personalization, and then 50% to somewhere where you might have, let's say, manual or rule-based or anything else, recommendations and other type of content. And then you can see whether you see an uplift in the different stats or the KPIs that you measure. And another way, which is usually way easier, is to look at cluster analysis. So out of the people who engaged with specific recommendations, for example, were they more valuable? And you can even create those segments within your Google Analytics and see basically if people who engaged, were they converting better, were they more valuable, and did they buy more? So those are the few different metrics you can look at, and then obviously I think most solutions, well, at least Nosto definitely, you see all the analytics in the back end, and you can see whether there's revenue coming through that can justify the spend on the platform.
And actually, Joy, we don't do the personalization bit that Nosto does, but I think in anything that digital, one of the ways that you can start to justify is, look for case studies of what other people have done. They're always going to be probably a little bit better than what you can achieve, because nobody writes a case study about something that's average. But it gives you a place to start, and it gives you some ammunition to go to the boss and say, hey, you know what, we should test this. And then once you get permission to test it, then totally follow on with what Patrick said. Use the stats, do a controlled study, make sure you can prove the business case, and then from there you're away.
Got it. There's a couple of questions I think I'll probably answer outside of this webinar. One, Gabriel from Romania had a bunch of questions about our community in Romania, so I can reach out to you separately about that. And Sean, I wasn't sure if you're having some troubles with links, so I will reach out to you about that as well, because I wasn't completely clear on your question. So with that, I think that we're good with questions. And I want to thank you, Patrick and Skip, for answering all those questions. I'm going to wrap up the webinar, and just a reminder that the webinar was recorded, and the recording will be posted in the resource section of Magento.com this week. And also, when you exit out of this webinar today, a brief survey of a few questions will launch. So please take a minute to complete the survey and kind of rank the webinar today. It's super helpful to get that kind of feedback. And it also helps us understand which personalization topics are of interest to you. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I hope to see you in our next webinar next month. Take care. Have a good rest of your day or evening. Thanks.